Hey Bike Ped, this is Amanda. I just wanted to let you know we are streaming live on YouTube now.
Thanks, Amanda. This is Jessie Tuberty. I'm going to fill in for Corey today because he's not feeling well. I'm the vice chair.
Hey Jessica, I made you a co-host. With this being a new webinar function, let me know if you see anything that you have questions on. I'll let you know ahead of time that the panelists are going to be like the people on the board, whereas your attendees are your members of the public, or maybe if you weren't able to get through the link, if you join through the agenda, that's where you'll show up on your participants list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you could just give us a few minutes, we are waiting for MCAT to start streaming. And MCAT is good to go whenever you are now.
Hey, everybody. Let's see, it's 3 p.m. and right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a simple majority of our committee of 9. Ben, are you in agreement that we can move forward with the simple majority?
I am. That counts as a quorum even.
Okay. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. It's 3 o'clock on my time, and just to do a quick roll call for MCAT. Let's see, I see James Walter, I see Jessica Goodburn, I see Christopher Pesci, I see Britt Arnson on the phone, and I'm Jessica Tuberty, I'm the vice chair. We're sorry that Corey isn't feeling well enough to be here with us today, and he's in our thoughts. Okay, the first order of business after the roll call is just to approve the previous minutes, and I would say the expectation is that we all have read them ahead of time. They're linked on the agenda that was sent out last week. And so does anyone have any comments? Okay, seeing none. I don't see any hands raised physically or in the participant box. So we're going to say that we have approved the previous minutes. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is general public comments. And as I'm checking on here, my understanding is they're listed as attendees, and that shows that there are 0. And so let me know if admin or Ben knows of someone in the public here to comment that I can't see or don't know about.
Hey, Jesse, it would be great if you could, oh, yeah, I was gonna say, if you could read the information about how people who might be watching on YouTube can call in. And it looks like admin just put it up on the screen, but if you want to read that out loud as well, that would be very helpful.
Sure. So for public comment information, if you're a caller, you will be placed in a virtual waiting room and you will be admitted to the meeting in the order received. When you've been admitted to the meeting, please mute your TV or computer during that time. If you do not, there will be an echo due to an approximate 30-second broadcast delay in the YouTube stream. During the public comment portion of the meeting, staff will identify you by phone number and invite you to comment. Please identify yourself by name before giving your comments. Thank you. The live meeting public comment phone numbers are 253-215-8782, and there are many other ones. Do you want me to read those too? Is one enough?
I think one's enough. They're on the screen.
Okay. And then the meeting ID is 960-049-3694, which you probably also need to know to join. Okay, now we'll see if we have anyone join. Okay, I still don't see anyone. Should we give it a few minutes?
I think it might be okay to move on, and just if someone calls in, then we can take the call when it comes.
Awesome. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is general board comments, and I'm glad to see everyone here. If you have any comments that are not related to agenda items, this is the time to make those comments. And I just ask that you would limit those comments to 5 minutes per speaker. And then I'll check to see if any of you guys have raised your hands. Oh, I have one person. It looks like James Walter would like to make a comment. Go ahead, James.
Just like to welcome the new board members. I see Christopher Pesci is here. Welcome to the board.
Hello, hello. It's good to be here, everybody. Thanks for the welcome.
Thanks for being here, Christopher. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to speak to that a little bit. Christopher, I'm going to reach out to you, and gee, I'm drawing a blank on who our other new member is, and apparently they're not with us today, but I will be reaching out to you guys with some welcome information and some things that we're trying to get up on the Bike Ped Board website and just have not been able to, but share with you some kind of baseline info that will hopefully help inform your input as a board member.
Fantastic. Yeah, it sounds great. Be good to get a little more background info going forward.
All right, the next thing on the board agenda is comment from city staff. And so Ben, it looks like you have a couple of different items on the agenda, and we're just going to honor the time by making sure that we spend less than an hour on those 2 agenda items.
Yes, definitely. I did call these 2 out specifically because while we don't have separate presentations from folks, these are items that the board has seen before, and I wanted to give kind of specific updates about them in particular. I want to start with Highway 200 and the plan, how it's moving forward through from Van Buren all the way to almost all the way to Bonner. As I believe most board members have seen, the Metropolitan Planning Organization has been leading a planning project to do some preliminary design work around improving the Highway 200 corridor. And they contracted with WGM to help do that. And after several public meetings and looking at different alternatives and options within those alternatives, they've landed on a preferred alternative. And I'm going to share my screen and show that on here. Is everyone seeing the East Missoula Highway 200 corridor plan? Okay. So, and this information is readily available on MissoulaMPO.com. And then you can find the Highway 200 plan in there. And there's also an opportunity to comment through that website as well. But so the preferred alternative is divided into 3 different sections, an A, a B, and a C. The A section is from Van Buren, kind of right near the I-90 interchange, out to about Easy Street, just before the next I-90 interchange. And then section B is the section through East Missoula. And then section C is from about Staple Street in East Missoula all the way out to Tamarack, close to West Riverside. The East Broadway segment preferred alternative includes, they're calling it the shared use path alternative. It has a 10-foot wide shared use path on the south side of the road. That would be adjacent to the Eastgate Albertsons and the WGM offices, and then the student housing in Missoula College out there. It would also include on-street bike lanes, curb and gutter on the north side, no sidewalk on the north side, in part because right-of-way is limited in places, and also in part because there's really not many destinations on that side. There's existing sidewalk on the stretch right by Van Buren, where there are businesses on that side of the street. And so this alternative came to be, people really gravitated towards the shared use path alternative here because that's currently how that sidewalk is being used. People ride their bikes on that side. We know that existing behavior, especially when trips begin and end within this corridor, people don't typically, if they're westbound, they don't typically cross Highway 200 to ride in the bike lane, just to cross Highway 200 again. To head back to where they're going. And so we wanted to design for what people will actually do. And the reason we're including bike lanes on street is we know that there's also through moving traffic that would prefer to stay on the street, whether it's road riders and other bicycle tourists that are traveling longer distances, or people who just want to go faster and maybe pay a little less attention to what pedestrians or dog walkers might be doing on the shared use path. This, you can see the typical section here includes a parking lane as well. That would only be, I think, about from the stretch. Well, you can see maybe here on-street parking, it's only a little bit further east of where the majority of the development is in this corridor. And so because there's, again, the right-of-way varies in width in this area. So the parking would only be there where it's possible. The bike lanes would be there throughout the whole thing. Moving further east, as you get to the railroad bridge, it would be widened out and the shared use path would continue under the bridge on the south side of the street. There would be a roundabout at one of the, just a second. There would be a roundabout at the eastbound off-ramp to help facilitate movement and improve safety there, because currently the bridge abutments provide a kind of barrier to visibility as you're going there. And so the roundabout would help with that. And then through East Missoula, it would transition to raised cycle tracks on each side of the street. It would be more of a kind of urban feel with boulevards, with street trees and sidewalk on the other side of those, with a two-way left turn lane in the middle. And here's an example of where that transition, how that would happen. So the shared use path is on the south side of the road here. And if you're an eastbound bike rider, you would be able to just join into the bike lane, which is indicated in tan on this. Similarly, if you were westbound and you wanted to get on the shared use path, you were on that raised cycle track, you would cross at this good crossing on the east side of Huyton Street with a center island refuge, and you'd cross in that, and then that crossing would be wide like a trail, and then you'd continue westbound on the trail there. Here's some more pictures of what that could look like. Here's a little bit further where the Ole's Country Store is, and there's currently kind of big expanses of no curb. There would be access management, and the streets would be very well defined where they would come in and out, and allowing crossing movements where possible, or where we expect to see pedestrians. There would be crosswalks marked. At the eastern edge of this section, the same thing would happen. As on the west edge, where the cycle track would transition to a trail. If you're eastbound here and you're on the bike lane, you would cross the street and then cross again in a nice wide crossing, and then get on a shared use path, which now picks up on the north side of Highway 200 and heads east. If you were westbound and you were on the trail, you would just cross through the intersection, and then you'd get on the cycle track there. Continuing further east, as you the shared use path would stay on the north side. You can see there are places that it would be a little bit lower than the roadway, which helps some separation. And then at the Speedway Avenue, right by the Sharon fishing access, we're looking at ways to improve that, both parking and access for pedestrians, hoping that it is safer and more convenient for people using that fishing access. And so they're looking at parking options. I'm a little unsure, I guess, why that diagram is not in this. Perhaps it's moving forward faster than this to try and make that, because that's an issue for the county currently, improving that. But there would be also a bus pullout potentially with an air compressor, so that people taking the bus would be able to inflate tubes and access that. So again, the location of this on the MPO's webpage, MissoulaMPO.com, and there's the East Missoula Highway 200 corridor plan, and they're accepting public comment on this through November 12th. Comments can be sent to Ann Cossett, ACOSSITT, at WGMgroup.com, or mailed to their address, 1111 East Broadway, Missoula, Montana, 59802. I'll try and answer any questions that anyone might have about this. But again, this board has been helpful, has seen other presentations earlier in the process and has made good comments. And so I would encourage, if there are any others that you might have, to make those through WGM. Seeing none, I guess I will move on and talk about the other.
Hang on. Sorry, Jessica had her hand up. I just didn't see it on the thing.
Oh, okay.
I did it kind of like, I was just wondering, it's cool to see those transitions and that there will be a complete route to get into town. What does the signage look like at the transition between the raised cycle track and the to the shared use path? Is the wayfinding plan?
You know, that's a good question, and one that is not fully developed yet, as far as I know. We've really just been thinking about pavement markings. This being Highway 200, it's an MDT corridor, and so I don't know exactly what sorts of signage would be allowed. Nothing jumps to mind immediately for me that I've seen within the manual for uniform traffic control devices that would be super helpful. But if you have suggestions or ideas, I think we'd be all ears. Again, this is kind of a high-level planning concept for design. None of the engineering work is being done, and so this includes a plan. If this is adopted, or when the final plan is adopted, the idea would be that this would guide project development when that actually comes forward, but we have no timeline for when this would actually come forward and be built. I think they're talking about, they're estimating right now this being in the neighborhood of $25 million, and it's unclear where that funding would come from right now.
So just to follow up on that, the where would be a good place? I mean, is it good to leave comments about that at this stage then? Or I think anytime you're crossing the highway, it would be important to be able to see clearly where to go next for bikes.
Yeah, it's certainly a good idea to make those comments now, even if there isn't a signing plan that would be included in this. I'm sure that something could be included in the narrative saying that signage is needed to help encourage desirable movement and behavior, or something like that.
All right, anyone else have any other comments?
I should note that at each of those crossings, they are talking about a rectangular rapid flashing beacon being added, so that you'd push a button and it would flash lights, so that you'd be able to get driver's attention and hopefully improve the yield rates and increase safety for people crossing. But as for directional signage, I'm not sure that that's been considered yet. The final piece that I wanted to show, and I hope it's here somewhere. Oh yeah, right out here. They don't have a close-up on it, but at the end, the trail is on the south side. It currently ends just right at the intersection with Tamarack that heads down towards the river. And so the trail would be extended for 100 feet or so, a couple hundred feet on the south side, where it would have a crossing to the north side, and that would also have a rectangular rapid flashing beacon to facilitate that crossing.
All right, anyone else have any board comments? I think it includes a lot of my favorite things about the plans that we've seen up to this point. And so I feel really happy with it. I think the board discussed a lot of the things that I see in this plan at prior meetings, and it's nice to see it come together. And I know the public input was also important, but anybody else have anything? Okay. I don't see anyone's hands up, so I'm going to tell Ben it's okay to move forward. Oh, wait, no,
Okay.
Britt put her hand up.
Hey, I finally figured out how to get onto a computer and do this, but I still had to use my phone to call in for the audio. So that hand is very helpful. I ran into Bob Giordano the other day, and he asked me to ask about why the cycle track isn't complete the whole way, like why it wasn't possible to do it on the East Broadway section.
Really, it was felt that it would be, well, the shared use path option offers greater protection than a cycle track would, and at arguably lower expense, certainly lower expense than the bike lanes that are there, and that we didn't think that a cycle track alone would encourage people. If you were beginning at Missoula College and say trying to ride to the university campus, and so crossing at Van Buren, we didn't think that just having a cycle track on the north side of Highway 200 would actually encourage bike riders to cross the highway just to cross it again at Van Buren. We thought that they would stay on the sidewalk. And so rather than staying on a sidewalk and conflicting with pedestrians, we wanted to add a shared use path on that side of the street.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
It also related to that, because there's so many, each property on the south side is a different use. To access the cycle track, you'd have to add a lot of curb cuts to it, and that would present some engineering challenges.
Makes sense to me. It sounds like a good plan. All right. Anyone else want to make comments? Christopher, you're new, but if you want to put your hand up and just talk about anything that you've seen or any ideas or things you've experienced when riding on that area, it's totally appropriate to do that. Okay. We're ready to hear about the build grant and Mullen area. Yeah,
so as this group is aware, the city and county together received a build grant of $13 million to help develop the collector road network out between Mullen and Broadway, west of Reserve. So the projects that it hopes to do are to build Mary Jane Boulevard through from Mullen all the way to Broadway, and then same thing with George Elmer, and then connect those two via England Boulevard. There's also some trail work that will be done with this first phase of the build grant. This project is moving along very, very quickly, and as such doesn't have quite as many opportunities as we might have for public and specifically board engagement with the design process. They're at 60% design right now, and or more or less 60%. But the way that it's going, they're kind of going back and forth with staff and trying to get these designs as quickly as possible for construction to begin next summer. This board has also received a presentation on the Mullen Area Master Plan and some of the bigger picture thinking about what the goals for this area are and how the transportation network might be able to help achieve them. And as such, the Mullen Area Master Plan included street designs or proposed street designs for this area. The build grant is doing a really good job of incorporating those planning concepts into what they're actually planning to build. And so England Boulevard, Mary Jane Boulevard, and George Elmer are all going to get protected bike lanes. In some locations, they're raised cycle tracks, and others they are kind of at street level, but protected from moving cars by a parking lane, a stripe buffer, and some sort of vertical element. We're not exactly sure what that will look like yet, whether it'll be just bollards or planters or something as well. But I'm on the mullenbuild.com website right here, and this shows everything that has been done to date, including existing conditions and safety data, locations, pictures of locations, and then what the 30% plans look like. And so the 60% plans aren't up here yet, but they are, we're reviewing them at the staff level and working with the consultant who is DJ&A as the project lead on this. to kind of fine tune those details. They will then move into the engineering to 90% drawings, and then finally a bid set. And so we're getting closer and closer. A way to get involved is there are upcoming meetings every other Friday. The next one is this coming Friday at from 9 to 10 a.m. online to go over the intersection improvements. So because we're kind of building this from scratch and not retrofitting existing locations, they are planning protected intersections out here, which is a concept that keeps the cycle track closer to where the pedestrian is and actually separates the bike riders from the drivers at the intersections by way of additional curb and bulb outs. And through the wide intersections, there might even be some center medians. So I don't have design documents to show you, but I encourage anyone who's at all interested in what's happening out there to go to mullenbuild.com and sign up for those meetings to learn more about what's happening out there. I can just say that we have been very pleased with the way that DJNA is incorporating the designs, the kind of hypothetical designs that were proposed in the Mullen Area Master Plan into what they're proposing to build. And so it really looks like a state-of-the-art bike and pedestrian facilities. Again, the goal of this is to help spur better development out there that is more mixed use and therefore multimodal. If there's places that people can shop and work and get a bite to eat then nearby, then they might not have to get in their car to do all those things. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for people to bike and walk out there and to connect to town. And I'm going to go over to Google Maps for a minute and zoom out and go look over here. And so one of the things that we're paying close attention to, for example, is Mary Jane Boulevard is right here right now. It just kind of ends in a field. We're going to build that all the way through to Mullen. When we do, we're paying particular attention to how the intersection with O'Leary Street right here will intersect with it. Can everyone see my cursor when I'm moving it around?
Mm-hmm.
So we're paying particular attention to O'Leary Street because this is a east-west route that will get you. O'Leary comes down, goes through this modern roundabout to Union Pacific, where there is a signal across Reserve, and Union Pacific just got bike lanes on it this year. Great Northern has bike lanes, so you'd be able to go there to Palmer, which has bike lanes, out to West Broadway, which we're working on getting bike lanes on. So as a way to get into town from this neighborhood. And so we're thinking about the neighborhood itself, but we're also trying to ensure that the connectivity into town is as good as it can be, because we know that development's going to happen out there. We know that I think our estimate is an additional 6,000 homes in this area between now and 2050. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for those people to be connected to elsewhere in Missoula. Perhaps people saw it in the news, but Parks and Rec just secured another access easement through, I believe, this property around here to help connect the Milwaukee Trail, which currently ends at Grove Street. We have the easement to the river. We have the easements over here. So we're a step closer to connecting that neighborhood here, this new neighborhood that we're planning for, to the Milwaukee Trail and to connect right into the heart of Missoula as well. And so there's a lot of good moving parts, a lot of good pieces out there. And again, I encourage people to participate through the website, which is mullenbuild.com.
All right, so all that sounds awesome. We talked about that trail connection and how important that is to bikers going from those new developments into town, and it's exciting that they're getting closer to that. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the Mullen build area? All right, I hope somebody or many of you can attend the meetings and offer some input from the bike and pedestrian perspective. That would be much appreciated. And it's a really interesting development, like a new urbanism for people who are joining us for the first time. Okay, let me check one more time, see if anybody's hands came up. Anybody have any other comments on that one? Okay, seeing none, I would like to ask if there are any committees meeting.
Oh, Jesse, I do have a couple other updates. Those are just the ones that I wanted to call out specifically on the agenda.
Okay.
I wanted to follow up on the presentation from last month on the slow speeds research that Madison, the intern in our office, presented on. We had a meeting with city leadership, and there's a little bit of hesitation from the attorney's office to pursuing a blanket speed limit reduction around the city. It's something that it's pretty clear in state law that speed limits in urban areas are 25 miles an hour. And so the recommendation that came from city leadership was that we roll that research into the other work that we're doing to revamp our traffic calming program. We're developing a neighborhood traffic management program that looks a little more holistically at entire corridors and neighborhoods along in residential areas. And look at ways that we can reduce speeds, reduce actual speeds, not just the speed limits, and through a combination of traffic control, meaning stop signs and roundabouts, and traffic calming, like traffic circles and bulb outs, and maybe even speed tables and other features. So we'll likely present here in December on kind of how those two pieces are moving together and coming forward, with the idea being that we will go to council either later in December or early in January with some recommendations with the proposed new program and some recommendations about how we're going to implement it. And that is about it for my staff updates.
Okay, hi Jean. Nice to see you. You joined us a little bit late. Good to see you. Just wanted to recognize that Jean Schmitz is here and joined our group. Thanks, Ben. I think there's lots of exciting things happening, and I feel lucky to live here. All right, let's see. With any other comments anyone would like to make?
Yeah, Ben, one question on what you just said. You mentioned something about the attorney kind of saying, well, this isn't a good way to go, and that to use the research on slower speeds to go along the line of traffic calming and picking out corridors and residential areas. I'm just looking at my quick notes here to use traffic calming along methods along with speed limits. How does that sort of, for lack of a better term, hesitancy, comparing with places, I think like, I can't think of all of them, but I think like Fort Collins or Boulder, I forget which one, was able to go with the more of a Gestalt kind of approach.
Different states authorize their municipalities to do different things, and so I'm not exactly sure on Colorado's, but Seattle has done that. When you get off the freeway in Seattle, there's a sign that says speed limit is 20 miles an hour unless otherwise posted. But in the state of Washington, cities have the very clear authority in the state law to do that, whereas in the state of Montana, we don't have that authority. Okay, so the idea of the local rule idea then is just maybe too hard of a pull at this time? That's the guidance from the attorney's office. Okay. Yeah. All right. It doesn't mean that it's a no-go. It just means that they would encourage us to look at other ways to achieve our goals. Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else have comments? All right, seeing none, I'd just like to ask if any of the subcommittees are meeting or have met. No. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's, so we're going to skip that agenda item and move on.
Jesse, I do have, I guess, one more thing. Seeing Jessica Goodburn and asking about subcommittee stuff made me want to give an update on the third Myrtle intersection. We successfully received the grant extension until June 30th, 2021. So we have another 8 months to get that project done, and I owe Jessica an email, but we're going to be getting together with the immediate neighbors to start actually designing what the parklets or areas behind the painted curb extensions will look like, with the different pavement marking materials and potential planters and whatever, and bike racks and other things that we might include there. So I owe Jessica an email to follow up. She reached out to me about a week ago saying, hey, can we get that going? And so we will very soon.
Awesome. Okay. Any comments from anybody on that? All right. So now we're on to the old business, and I want to spend the majority of the rest of the time we have together making the bike pedestrian board's priority planning work plan, kind of. So this came from the best practices for bike ped groups. And so basically people feel like every year the bike ped board's work plan should include the statutory obligations, especially so that new members like Christopher and others can see, like, what does the year look like when you join a board? What does it mean? What do we talk about? What are we doing? How do we spend our time? And so I sent you guys just like a little tiny table that I made that had 2021 work plan on it. And the beginning of it just includes those statutory obligations. But in addition to those, which have to be included, and I think it's important to know when we should expect those to occur, I'd like to add onto our work plan what the board feels like is the most important thing for them to learn more about, so that we can provide recommendations to city council and advisory opinions on those specific items. And so that's what I really want to hear from each board member is, when you look at this plan, we have statutory obligations that we're not going to be able to change, that are part of our work year all the time, they'll stay on the work plan. And so those are not what I really want to discuss. I just thought they needed to be on there so that new people and board members are like, oh yeah, this is when we talk about this. It's really the second part of the work plan, which is, what are we going to spend our time and attention specifically on, learning more about, trying to advocate for. And so I wanted to see what you guys thought as you looked at that document. And it's just, a skeleton of a document right now, but I think that it is important to sort of think through what we really want to spend, our months discussing and advocating for, as far as recommendations and advisory opinions to the city council. And so this would be, specific advisory opinions. So with that, I did have some questions about some of the terminology, and I just created this really quickly. And so in the second column, if you're looking at it, it says committee commitment, and that's us, the board. So it should have said board, my mistake. And then it says staff commitment, that's referring to the city staff, typically Ben, who are spending time helping us. And then the schedule is, when in the year are we discussing these things? When do each of these priorities fit in? And so I would say the first half of the document is static. It's just there because it's our obligation. The second half of the document, it should change every year, I think, based on what's happening new in our town and what concerns we have. And I filled in some things that I think are super important, but you probably have some of your own ideas, or you want to talk about them more. And I think that that's where we should start. And so I would like to hear from everybody. Ben's got his hand up. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks, Jesse. I think that document is a great start and really helpful. I wanted to clarify a couple things and hopefully help facilitate discussion. I think that the hours, we should be thinking about what would it take to make a project, program, or research or whatever it is that you want to do. We should really think about the total hours that would take to do it as good as possible without considering what our existing limitations are in our, especially at the staff level within work plans. I think that we can do that. We can then filter things after you come up with a broad list. And I invited Catherine here, and Aaron will be joining us later because we want to help the board brainstorm what those can look like and offer as much input as we can provide on what we think something might take, both committee hours and staff hours on things. And then the other piece that I wanted to put out there is that this board is an advisory board. Your statutory obligation is to provide advice to city elected officials and staff about how we can improve conditions for biking and walking in Missoula. That does not prevent you from doing actions yourself and creating programs. It just, you're not obligated to. And so people, and this is a fine line that we've walked before, board members sometimes want to be more involved and actually take charge and do some things. And sometimes board members just want to come to the monthly meetings and weigh in on what's going on. And that's fine. And so I would just ask that board members be, as you start developing ideas and then you start voting on which ones or, discussing which ones you want to move forward, I would just keep that in mind, that your obligation is to provide counsel to us, and but that nothing actually prevents you from doing more, but you can't require it of your fellow board members to do more. What their job is to provide guidance to city staff and administration. Does that make sense?
Lots of nodding of heads, I see. I would recommend, as we work through this work plan, that we go through the items from the top of the chart down and make sure, Ben, that I haven't duplicated program names and little, and that you're looking at it and thinking, yeah, that's what it's called. And yes, that's what we need to do. Because as I made the list, I was like, boy, they sound alike. So I just want to be sure that on the work plan, before we have open discussion about the more flexible things, that the things we have to do are named correctly on the document. And so the first one on the list is the Community Investment Program, CIP recommendations. Is that correct?
It is. And yeah, I think that you have a good list here. Just so that we're all looking at the same document, I'm looking at a Google Doc that you shared with me on October, that says the last edit was made by you on October 6th. Is there a more up-to-date version of this document that you're aware of?
No. Nope, that's it.
Okay, my only addition to the Community Investment Program recommendations is to add spring-summer to the schedule timeline on that.
Okay.
This year it was summer. Our hope is to get that in front of you sooner because we want to be developing our budgets earlier in the process than last minute like we did this year.
All right, and then my recollection was the CIP recommendations, the presentation was at a board meeting and it took up almost the entire board meeting, at least one, maybe two, one.
Yeah, the CIP is different than the further down, the recommendations to the City of Missoula proposed public works project list. So the CIP is kind of the big capital investments that we make. I think that the reason it took up so much time this year is it was our first year ever developing a master list and ranking projects. Now that we have that list, when we come back next year, we're going to say, this is what we got done. These are the projects that we got done this past year, and these are the ones that we're proposing to move forward on this year. I think it will take a lot less time than than this year's process did.
Okay, so maybe just one board meeting for that, you would say? So
I
that
would,
would,
yeah, one, maybe two, and it wouldn't take up a whole meeting.
okay, I'm just gonna put 2 to 4 hours, and then the staff commitment, it would be nice if you could estimate that. I mean, it seems like it could be huge because that is a huge endeavor. I don't know.
It is, but since it's already within my work plan, I'm really not worried about that one at all in any way.
Okay.
And so don't be alarmed when I plug a high number in there. Don't be alarmed. That's totally within my work plan.
Okay. And then the next item was nomination of board officers. That is in the bylaws. It occurs every year in September. I added it in because it's required. We do it every year. The next one is the election of board officers. So that is also in the bylaws and required to be done in October of every year. And then the next one is set a calendar for the board meetings. And again, that is also in the bylaws and required and occurs in November. And then the next one is the long range transportation plan, or the LRTP, which we gave recommendations about. And I have the name right.
Yep, that is the long range transportation plan, the LRTP. And this one, it happens every 4 years. We're just in the middle of it right this year. So probably the next presentation to the board will be at the January meeting, and they will be seeking adoption by April. So there will be 1, maybe 2 more board meetings where there will be a presentation about the long range plan. And then I forget who it is, but I know that there's board representation on the citizens committee for that long range trip. It's Jessica Goodburn. Okay.
Okay, Gene has his hand up. So Gene, I'm sorry I didn't see you, but put your hand up if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Not a problem. Yeah, and I think I've asked this before, and maybe I forgot the answer, or maybe there wasn't one at the time. When we have these presentations, because I've been on the board a few years, even though I had to take some time off because of physical situation, but I've been through some of the presentations, and sometimes it's from Aaron, and sometimes it's from Zoom in Motion, and they're all very well and good. But for me personally, and I think for maybe some of the others, it would be nice if there could be some type of something that's sent out that we can look at on our screen to kind of get a look ahead on what's going to be presented, and that might be able to allow us to formulate some better questions and comments than when we're sitting in a meeting trying to digest and think around comments that we might have in real time. And sometimes I've come out of a meeting thinking, oh, I wish I had asked this, or I wish I had thought about this after a meeting. And I think sometimes if it could be possible to have some type of a PDF, Jessica, like you put out on the work plan, something giving an outline at least of what's coming down the pike and some of the bullet points and whatever under some of these things, to me personally, it'd be helpful. I'm not sure about anybody else, and I'm not sure what from the staff time and whatever the feasibility is, but I'm just kind of putting that out there again as something we might aspire to. So that's just sort of my comment and question.
Yeah, Gene, we've been working on that, and when the presentations originate at staff level, the past few months, I think we've done a pretty good job at getting them attached to the agenda the week before, when the agenda is published. It's difficult when the presentations happen when they're created by the consultants. They're often putting the finishing touches on them up to them when the meeting starts. They are always attached after the meeting to the agenda, and board members can always submit comments and questions back to staff outside of meetings. We just can't engage in back and forth between board members about, you can't have discussion among board members about those items, not in the public meeting. But you can always reach out with additional comments and questions and concerns to us.
Okay, so Gene, what I heard you say is you would appreciate as much as possible for the city or consulting folks to attach presentations, especially if they include really detailed, like the Highway 200 plan, which was very lengthy and involved, ahead of time so that we could look at it so that we'd have a more robust discussion and a better use of board's members' time during
Yeah,
the-
with the
Does that sound right?
200 plan, that was really ideal because we had access. I had access. I could go in and look at all the little options, and I could go in and make comments, directly on the site to do that, and that's really great. In contrast, there was a presentation which was essentially a hyperstack or what do you call it? A slide presentation. And the slides went up on the screen when we were in the meeting. This is last year, maybe the year before. And I still remember it because I was kind of straining my neck to look around and read everything. And the person presenting it was reading through the entire thing. And I'm thinking to myself, I can read this all by myself. If I'd had a chance to read it ahead of time, I could have made some notations when we got to those certain parts and had them ready in terms of having a question or clarification. So I kind of felt, and it was like 40 minutes of this at least. And it became rather frustrating for me because I'm thinking, well, here's this whole bullet point, this set of slides, bullet point by bullet point on what the plans were and what the progress was. And I'm going like, gee, I would have been very happy to spend an hour plus on my own looking over this and then having some comments and questions ready when we came in and save some of that meeting time, hopefully, for other business, given what we've only got, 24 hours a year, basically, to do this stuff.
Right. So what I hear you say is that you would appreciate as much as it is possible for the presentations that are given to not be being read to the board.
If it's possible that there's a presentation that's basically going to be, printed stuff and charts and stuff put up on a screen, I'd like to see it ahead of time if it's available, so that during the meeting, maybe the person that's doing the presentation can ask for, say, how many people have taken a look at this ahead of the meeting. Maybe if everybody's had, or most of everybody's had, it could be gone through quicker, and then there'd be a little bit more time left for questions, et cetera, to come in. That's all. I'm just trying to make a little bit better use of our time in meetings.
Understood. I think it is a lofty goal. I think Ben and the other city staff can only control what they can. And so it's a great thing for us to say, please do, but if they're consultants, they're just recognizing that they don't, the consultants are probably just going to do what they do. So as much as we can, right? Okay, to circle back to the long range transportation plan, I just wanted to clarify. So it is adopted every 4 years, but is it discussed with the board every year? Or would it be that we talk about it in January and April and then no more for 4 years?
It'll be, no more for 4 years unless there's some sort of major revision that needs an amendment to go through TPCC that directly impacts something related to biking and walking. It won't be discussed again for 4 years. Okay,
so 2021 will be the year, and then we can be on a schedule after that. Is that what you are saying? Okay.
Yeah, that it'll be done by April of 2021, and it won't be brought up. You won't hear about it until 2024.
Okay. All right. And then the next one on the list is the Transportation Improvement Project, or TIP recommendations. Is that correct?
Yep. And that is one that, that's one that, I don't know that the board necessarily weighs in on. That's run by the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And that is, so the long range plan looks out 30 years into the future and says, this is the amount, this is how Missoula is projected to grow. This is where we want to see it grow. This is how much federal transportation funding we can expect to get in that time frame. And here's all the projects that we think we can do within that time frame. What the TIP does is it looks only 5 years into the future and says, this is all the money that we have. These are the projects that we're actually going to do in the next 5 years. So that does get approved each year, but it's almost a matter of housekeeping. It's like moving through the next phase of that. It's not a major planning process. It's just kind of a budgetary item that the MPO manages. I don't know.
Did we hear about it this year?
I doubt it, because it's not.
Okay.
Again, it's more the federal funding, and really all of the money is going to Russell right now. That's where and will be through 2031.
Okay.
I mean, there are other things in the tip, and I'll talk to Aaron. We can ask him when he gets on if there's a good way for the board to weigh in on tip approval, but I'm not sure that it's the best use of board time, or that there's a great opportunity to make changes. It's always good information. It's good to be informed of what's happening and how money's being spent, but I don't know what the best way to be involved with that is.
Okay. And then active transportation plan recommendations.
That one is currently, while the plan still exists, we haven't sunsetted or anything. It was written in 2011 or adopted in 2011. And most of what, it still has great information in it, but most of what has come out of that plan is also in the long range plan and helped form the foundation for the bicycle facilities master plan and the pedestrian facilities master plan.
Okay, so we didn't hear about that this year?
Didn't hear about it this year.
Okay.
There's no updates to it. There's no planned rewriting of that plan, and there's no working committee to implement things from that plan, because again, most of what that plan has recommended is in the intervening 9 years has been incorporated into the work that everyone is just doing.
Okay. And then recommendations to the city of Missoula proposed public works.
That's the one where we spent the whole meeting going project by project of what was being chip sealed and what was being resurfaced and things like that. That is one of the statutory obligations for the board to weigh in on. We're working on getting that to you earlier. We want to do it earlier. It's not like we're trying to keep something secret. We want to be years in advance, or 2 years in advance instead of 3 months in advance, knowing what projects are happening. I'd say that this year I'll be able to share something with you at least at the January meeting, if not December. So we'll hopefully be able to knock that out in winter/spring instead of spring/summer.
Okay. That sounds good. All right, now we get to the fun part, which is to be, sharing our vision for what the group needs to work on. And I guess I'll just look for raised hands if people have thought about things that they would like in particular to focus on. And then we can, if you want to go through the list, we can. But I want everybody to have a chance to talk about it. Everyone's being really quiet. Oh, wait, I see a hand. Jessica.
I was actually just going down your list, but the next one, implement and advise on activities. I think Bike Month would fall into this category. And I know that Missoula in Motion was working on switching away from kind of transitioning to not being in charge of that. And so Jean and James and I did quite a bit this past year working with Missoula in Motion, but we could think about whether that's something that the board wants to take on, or how much we're kind of facilitating another group.
All right, I think that sounds awesome. I love Bike Month. I think it's just fantastic. And any other partners besides Missoula in Motion that you guys would like? Let's see who we got. Anybody?
Oh, Catherine has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to update. So we probably will be doing like minimal involvement this year with Bike Month. So we can still be a resource and probably take on some component that has to do with education or safety to encourage biking. And in past years, we had reached out to different other kind of partners with Bike Month, and there wasn't a whole lot of involvement from those partners last year, but I think it'd be worth reaching out to them again in the future if group rides are happening. So like Women Bike Missoula, Missoula Bike Club, and those sorts of organizations. I think we have a list somewhere. But further down the road, when group rides are happening again, I think those groups would be happy to collaborate on Bike Month as well.
Awesome. I love that idea. I love Bike Month. It's just always been so much fun for me when we had the the kids activities through Safe Routes to School. I thought it was just such a fun month. It was like a month-long festival if the weather was good. And just to be clear, that's May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always in May.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have comments? Gene has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, along the same lines as like a Bike Month activity and just encouragement of biking and walking. And this maybe ties in a little bit to the potential greenways, the ones that are listed on the map. And I'm wondering if it might be, and this is something maybe Bob at Free Cycles would be interested in getting involved in too. The idea of saying, I'm looking at the old Hobbit movies or book, There and Back Again, getting from one part of the residential area into downtown, and maybe establishing a group ride for people who are kind of new to commuting or bicycling in general, using their bikes around town and saying, hey, we're going to leave from this parking lot, any particular spot we might pick out, and we're going to head down from there to get to, it could be almost anywhere, Caris Park or the university or shopping, or maybe the, what do you call it, Southgate Mall, or, anything. So to say, what's a good route to get from here to there, and what are some things maybe you need to be a little bit aware of at certain intersections? And I'm thinking of just doing, having people sign up for a group ride of maybe a dozen or 15 people, and sort of, encouraging people to, kind of get connected that way. And so that's my input on that.
Okay, Ben, what's your comment?
I'm trying to just fill out this form and as kind of as practically as possible and thinking of times. And so when we say Bike Month, I think that there's room for all sorts of great activities, but, and Jean, that sounds like a fantastic idea. When Catherine and I hear Bike Month, what we expect, or like what the expectation from our side is the activities include creating a calendar of events for the month, publishing that calendar in as many places as possible and posting it, and then leading some of those activities, and that some of those activities include commuter breakfasts during the month. And then any other activities are bonus. But so I put, for just those that I mentioned, I put in the hours that would be a total of 100 hours. And Catherine, please let me know if you think I'm way wrong on that. And what I said, my potential breakdown was 90 to the board and 10 for staff. And again, that 90 doesn't have to be board members. Board members could recruit BLAM or Women Bike Missoula or other people to do that, or Pedal Missoula or any of the other organizations in town. But what I think I could commit Missoula in Motion to is helping promote it on social media and being a resource for getting the word out about specific events, and using our valet racks if they're needed at different places, using event racks if they're needed at places, and just being a resource. So I just expected about 10% of the total time we could probably contribute pretty easily.
So Ben, along those same lines, as far as partners at the city level, I know that Parks and Rec hosts walks, especially for seniors. They call it like morning coffee or morning walk. And how likely do you think it is that Parks and Rec could include in their programming really intensive, like focused on bicycle activities as part of their standard programming in the month of May. Do you feel like that's a reasonable ask or unreasonable?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Whenever we have, how do I say this? They have their own programs that they like running, and while they've been good partners with us on things, we've never broached the concept of giving them any of the bike month activities like that. So I really don't know. And it's kind of right at the time of the year where they're transitioning from after school to camp programs. And so and hiring all of their staff, I don't know what their capacity would be. I don't think it's unreasonable, but I think it might be challenging, especially to happen this May, to make that change right away.
I think it'd be a nice thing to ask, and since they already have, some programming and sort of in that same vein of taking a ride with others. And I do think, as a parent who's raised a kid in Missoula, that their programming guide to each season is read by almost every family in Missoula. And people are just scouring it to come up with their plans. And so it would be super helpful if they, at least were approached about, because the programming for Bike Month has changed so much, because Missoula Motion is focusing on different things, which is appropriate, but we need other partners who might be already structured to lead activities and to promote those activities in a guide that they're already making. So I think that would be nice. And I also think that the neighborhood councils, which meet regularly, are an excellent way to come up with a community building neighborhood activity that is bike related. What do people think about that?
My inclination, Jesse, would be to say these are all great ideas and they should all be kind of taken as notes under this Bike Month field. And before deciding whether or not that's something the board wants to do, the board should generate all of the ideas and then kind of weigh them against each other. That was how I was picturing this process working, because maybe people will be all gung-ho about this, but maybe something else will come up and people will say, oh shoot, we should do that instead of Bike Month if we have limited engagement time.
Okay.
Or maybe
Anyone
people
else?
will be so energized by all of the ideas that people will just start tackling all of them.
Anyone else have specific thoughts about Bike Month or partners that they would like to engage?
I don't know if anybody's contacted me. I would be willing to contact some of the ones I'm more familiar with, maybe with proposal. Any of the bike shops set up to do particular event, whether it's something on how to patch a flat tire, or how to lubricate your chain, or maybe have something like a mini bike rodeo or something at a nearby park. I know sometimes, right now bike shops, they can't keep bikes in stock. A lot of times, other times they've overloaded with sometimes mechanical work. So, and I don't know the business model that they have in terms of trying to maintain and attract a loyal following, but so I don't know if it's been done before. I think it might be worthwhile. I would be willing to go out sort of with a proposal or plan if we can come up with one. So that's one thought. And then the other one is, there's 90 hours or whatever, and this is for May. If we're doing this Bike Month, because that's National Bike Month. That's pretty short calendar. We're looking at basically, February, March, April. So really a lot of our preliminary stuff would need to get done January, February. So just something to keep in mind in terms of how we're trying to round up people, whether it's Parks and Rec or somebody else.
Jessica has her hand up next. What were you going to comment on that?
Actually, this is not related to Bike Month. So if
okay, we're moving on. Okay, Jean, anybody want to comment on that? I think the bike shops are a great idea. I think any partners that we can engage with to keep Bike Month to be a special time in Missoula, I think that we should. And it's in a way it's overwhelming, but when we had Safe Routes to School federal funding and we were doing those celebrations for Bike Months, the schools did a lot of the celebrations around Bike Month. And so asking schools to do that is another idea that I have, because they like to celebrate and they have a captive audience. All right, now let's move on. Jessica, what did you have in mind next?
I was thinking it would be helpful to have a better idea of what Mountain Line is doing and how we could collaborate with them. And so maybe that's an idea for a presentation at some point.
Yeah. What is Mountain Line doing? All right.
Plan, and especially related to the Mullen Build Grant. What's going on over there?
Okay, I think that's a great idea. And also with that Highway 200, the tubers getting dropped off at Sharon is also something to think about. Okay, what about, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I really am interested in having a bike share or bike rental as part of the city fabric of Missoula. And so for me in this whole list, that's one of the most important things. I think that we're such a bike friendly town. Visitors and people who don't own bikes should have the ability to get one from a bike share and ride our wonderful bike lanes and bike paths and enjoy them. I find it frustrating when I visit other places that have that we don't have a bike share or rental option in the city, especially in the city core and I just feel like maybe you would just need like 2 places, maybe 3, maybe close to the river downtown, near UM's campus, and then by the X's. But I feel like, what are the barriers to that happening, and what do you see the board being able to do to help with that? I think that's the question.
So we've looked pretty extensively at bike share in the past. The types of systems that have dock stations are currently prohibitively expensive for a city like Missoula.
Okay.
Even for a small system where it would be an upfront investment of several $100,000 and probably an annual $100,000 to maintain them. And sure, some of that is recoupable potentially in rides and in advertising, but the cities that have the docked bike share systems have made a financial commitment that we just can't make to keeping those up and going. Some of them are entirely public. Some of them are public-private partnerships. Some of them are like privately managed after an upfront investment. But it just isn't, it hasn't seemed right for us, and no one is approaching us. We're too small for any of the big players to approach us about that. We've looked at dockless bike share, and those companies transitioned away from bikes and more towards electric scooters, and our council said that they don't want those. And so we've let it lie for a little over a year now. It's certainly worth revisiting, but it's something that has not been at the top of our agenda because, again, the companies that at least are nationally known, they want to bring scooters in, and that's not where council is. That's my quick and dirty update. I could talk for hours with you if you want to learn more about, if you want, I'll happily share the research that we've done and the reports that we've written about it. And I would love it if someone could take that on, but it hasn't been deemed a good use of our energy right now.
So I guess the point, the time now with making our work plan is, does the board want to hear about those options? What are our options in a city of our size to allow visitors to enjoy our bike facilities and trails? Is that something people would support?
Jesse, yeah, I have that on my list too, and I have talked to Ben over time, or kind of asked about it. So I was aware that there were definitely some barriers. I was wondering whether there would be, just with Mullen and with Highway 200, whether we could look at some creative ways, because we will want to be getting people from downtown to the Mullen area, and kind of thinking about it in that way as we have more distance. I mean, rather than just focusing on the central downtown area. So that was one thought I had. But Ben, there was that other company, Colony, that was kind of like a mode.
Agnostic was the term.
Agnostic, yeah, I couldn't think of the. And whether they were still up and running. It seems like with COVID, there are probably some other complications with like bringing this in now, but I do think we should start thinking about that.
Yeah, you know, we had a meeting with Colony and they never followed back up with us, which we thought was a little bit strange. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth considering again. And so perhaps rather than think about what creation of a whole bike share program would be, for our purposes, we think about a bike share presentation at board, and like spent at a board meeting and spending some time brainstorming what it could look like in Missoula.
I think that's fair. I mean, I feel like our job is to issue advisory opinions to city council. And if we feel like that's a need and want to bring it in, I feel like it's great to make them aware of it and have us be informed about like what has been looked at and where are there opportunities to be creative or think of a different way to do it. It is surprising. I mean, a lot of times it seems like bike rentals grow organically when those long trails are created, like have been created to Lolo that links up to the Bitterroot, that someone who's an entrepreneur sees an opportunity. And then those rides are advertised and someone is able to capitalize on that. But at any rate, I think I would support it being on there. If you feel really strongly in the other way, please feel free to comment, but that's how I feel.
I don't. I'd be happy to prepare something next year, especially closer to when hopefully we're rounding the corner on COVID.
Yeah, I would rather be proactive on it than not, than reactionary.
So when I'm filling out the hours in here, I'm just going to suggest 2 hours of board discussion, and whatever the time that I'll need to make some presentations on, rather than thinking of what an actual bike share program would entail hours wise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do so that we know what has been looked at and discussed already. All right, let's see. So the next one on my list was Bike Ped Public Information and Education Review. I really feel like this might just need to be part of our standard calendar. That's just kind of how I feel. How do other people feel about it? All right, Gene's got his hand up.
Yeah. And I've kind of made this known before, and I think a fair number of members are fairly aware of it. And I've written some columns about it in the paper. I would, first of all, change the description by adding one word. And again, I don't know how this falls into the spectrum for Ben's office or development services, but it says Bike Ped Public Information and Education Review. And to that would add and development. Now, in talking about the things that we went over, I think it was last month or maybe the month before, there was Ben was showing the different education aspect in terms of pamphlets and videos and such. So obviously in the past, the staff has taken the time and expense to have some type of information, not only about bike routes, et cetera, but about smart bicycling, for lack of a better term. And what I recommended before and still do was to take that and sort of tidy it up, kind of put it together in a neater, more complete and accessible package. I don't know how many, over the years, how many people have gone into these videos, but I'm trying to think of something in terms of some type of webinar or series of YouTube videos or something to get bicyclists better informed for not only where they can ride, but what some of the best tips and techniques are for riding. And I'll use an example quickly of the woman who back in July got hit on Higgins. Actually, it wasn't on Higgins, it was on the sidewalk adjacent to Higgins. And it was, to me, from what I know, and I may not know everything, this was a case of a young person, she's about 20, simply didn't understand some of the things that people in vehicles tend to do, which is a poor practice. And if you know the typical poor practices of others, then it's called defensive driving, where you can do something on your part to make sure that you have a countermeasure to their lack of attention, etc. So I think it's, since it's been done before to a certain extent, I think the development services in Ben's office, I think the board should consider asking them over the next year or so is to work with people on the board. I'm looking right now for people, maybe through the university, that have good, video and internet skills to be able to put something together that's attractive and get it out there for the community at large. So that's kind of my take on the.
So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that there is a great need for education. And since our role is to offer recommendations and advisory opinions for the city council, then in that case, after hearing or getting an update on the public information and education, it would be our role to then recommend that those existing structures be updated as being important to the city, because we see a lack of education. And so what I see us as being able to do is structurally assist the bike ped office at the city level with obtaining additional staff or resources to do these things that we've identified as needing an update or needing a different, point of view. And so I think that it would be that we, after seeing the presentation, that we recommend that additional resources be committed to more educational videos or whatever for the bike safety and education in Missoula.
Well, either additional resources in terms of staff people, interns, or maybe a reallocation or prioritization of the workings that they presently have listed as the staff priorities, what they're committed to and what their options are. I think as part of our advisement thing, we can say, well, we think, we think this particular thing, we'd like to move it into a higher priority setting than it seems to have right now. So that's the other avenue to go
Gotcha.
with. Instead of just saying, well, if we're going to do this, we need to ask the city or agencies to kind of round up more money. Maybe it's not a matter of more, maybe it's a matter of prioritization. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, I like that too. I mean, they have their own work plan, and certainly us recommending that things get moved up to the top based on what we see, I think is totally appropriate. And so I think that's great. Ben had his hand up for a while, but then he kind of disappeared. So are you there?
I am still here. I'm just canceling my video because my internet is getting slow on me and Gene was breaking up a little bit. So I'm gonna shut my video for a second and keep talking.
Okay.
I guess I see this as multiple ways to go about it. Just a quick reminder, you advise staff, not just council, so you can send recommendations to to staff as well about how we should do things. And in a lot of cases, we prefer that you do that instead of go to council. But then the other is that with something like what Jean is asking for, it's not currently in our work plan or budget. I think that to get us to take it seriously and reallocate our existing resources, something like that, we would have to see a really convincing argument for why we should do that. And I don't know that one has been made. But finally, I guess what I would hope might happen is that the board would want to take something like that on instead of just asking staff to, so that the board would figure out what actually was entailed in making that happen, and then actually make it happen. So, and then of course staff would be able to be a resource on something like that. And so my guess at doing something that Jean is asking for is 200 hours. And again, I think that staff could easily commit to 10% of that and being a resource to help proofread scripts and publish things online and get the word out about the program's existence. But the actual, hiring the actual development of the videos and filming and all of that, I think that would be a harder, the actual creating the program, creating the bones of doing something like that is something that we don't have the capacity to do.
Understood. Okay. I think that's still something that maybe needs to be updated to the board, and the board needs to think about their own personal goals and abilities in helping us meet, improve that. I think of the bike ped public information education almost like the updating is sort of like updating a website. It's probably not something that needs to be done every year, but it's probably something that needs to be done every 5 or 10 years because technology changes, what we know changes, graphics change, things like that. And so I feel like maybe this is one of those things, sort of like the long range transportation plan, that we don't have on our work plan every year, but we have it on the work plan when we feel like it's not meeting the needs in the community. Okay, so moving on, just looking at time. The next thing I'd like to discuss, and let me check, make sure nobody's hands up, are sidewalk repairs and the walkability issue. We focus on bikes a lot, but I would like to understand better how bad sidewalks are managed and how that all works, especially when people do huge renovations of a home or an apartment complex or build a new building and don't include a sidewalk or don't fix the sidewalks. And then in addition, just what happens, there are some neighborhoods where their sidewalks are just in horrible disrepair. So how does that process work? I just feel like I don't really have a good understanding about how it happens, who pays for it, how are the priorities determined? And so that would be, I think, worth having a whole meeting just about discussing the sidewalks. So how do people feel about that one? Everybody's quiet.
From a staff perspective, we'd be happy to put together the presentation. I'd bring the people that manage the sidewalk complaints and maintenance and try and put that together as much as possible. If you said a whole meeting, so I put 2 hours for the board on that. And again, the prep time is fine from a staff perspective, regardless of what that takes.
And I think that that's also one of those things because of the tax incremental financing that's used and all the different, it seems like there's lots of different ways that sidewalks are getting repaired based on just being an observer in the community. And so I feel like that would be an ongoing one because I feel like our city's views on sidewalks and how important they are and who pays for them are changing all the time and the money available is changing. And so it's not something that would be just not there at any point. Okay, and then anyone's hands up, let me look. Oh yeah, Britt's hands up. Go ahead, Britt.
I really wholeheartedly agree with this topic, and maybe we can wrap into it a discussion of how the sidewalks are treated in construction zones, because it seems like there's not a lot of thought to that. Like right now they're building the Missoula International School on 3rd. There's a lot of workers there every day, but nobody's shoveling the sidewalk after the snow. And I think that winter maintenance of the sidewalks and like removal of vegetation and like the whole thing around sidewalks, developing a culture where people understand that they're valuable for the whole community and keep them clean and take good care of them, especially in neighborhoods when new sidewalks go in. Maybe people don't know that they're supposed to clean them. And then also, there's just kind of no excuse right now for new buildings or like huge remodels to go up without addressing sidewalk issues. Like sometimes you can see someone spent, 6 figures on remodeling something, but then still somehow managed to not have to put in a sidewalk. And to me, that just doesn't seem right. So I guess I'd like to have more conversation about the overall thing about sidewalks and how we can get in on the ground level when things are being built and rebuilt. And then also addressing just the culture of, like you said, people caring about them and knowing about them and what to do and how to finish the system.
All right, I agree with that. And I think that echoes what I think are just going to be ongoing discussions that are needed every year. Jessica Goodburn had her hand up.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if I have a ton to add other than maybe we could develop some kind of resource, or staff could develop a resource for us, because I do think there are a lot of moving parts, and sometimes it's dealt with by individuals, and sometimes neighborhood councils are curious about fixing sidewalks. And I just think it would be good to have one place to go to eventually where we'd have that information.
All right. Jean, is your hand up again?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
This is the sidewalk thing, I think is great. And I think it's one of these things where, again, maybe we can get sort of a preview document about, what the plans are over the next couple of years for doing sidewalks. And then also whatever the process is for people to raise issues about sidewalk conditions and bad ADA ramps and vegetation, all that kind of thing. So if that could be the kind of thing where we could take a look at that before the meeting, maybe that would help us either stay within the 2 hours or maybe even need less than 2 hours for that, if we had a way of kind of looking at the how things are done and why they're done that way ahead of time.
I think that sounds great too. I always like to have things at a time if it's at all possible, just to read through and let it kind of simmer in there for a little bit. Okay, let's see. So then I combine two categories because I feel like they kind of go together. Grant projects that are in development and special projects that are in development. I think it's always good. I know Jessica Doherty Goodburn has written a grant for a project, and I think that it would just be interesting for me to know at the city level what grants that are specific to bike and pedestrian facilities are being considered or in the works, or they've heard about that the board members who are interested in writing could assist in pursuing them as a resource if they chose. But just having I don't even know who does it. I'm sure that Aaron and Ben know, but it would be nice for us to hear from them or from whoever is in charge of that. How's it going?
We have found that at the city level, we don't really go after grants that are smaller than tens of thousands of dollars, because administering them is not, we don't get enough bang for the buck in administering them. The one that Jessica wrote through AARP is about the lowest the city would go for. We were super supportive and are helping guide the implementation of it, but Jessica did a lot of the heavy lifting of writing the grant and building the support from the neighborhoods, and in ways that in some ways it's better to come from a community member than from a city in a case like that because of the negative impact of the parking loss. But yeah, what we found is when we've gone after grants of less than 10 grand, it's been just more trouble than it's worth if we even get them to manage them effectively. So we're really only aware of like the large federal transportation grants. That's where we spend our energy, what we spend our energy looking at. I know other than AARP, I know there's a People for Bikes grant that's a kind of small dollar figure to help implement smaller projects. And I imagine some quick research could identify some others that I just am not up to speed on right now.
So,
and again, those are things that staff would support the board doing, but that we're likely not gonna just turn our attention to going after small dollar grants.
And so I think just to clarify, what I would like is a presentation about grants that you know of that the board can either pursue or not pursue. But if there are ones at the city level that you're dealing with the big, huge Highway 200 or build grant at Mullen or whatever it is, and we could hear about opportunities to pursue the small ones. I know that this has happened for the urban forestry, because the forestry folks have sort of these, cyclical, small grants, and they make people aware, and community partners like Trees for Missoula will apply for those small grants that enhance the city parks. And so they're sort of, just kind of helping it along. And so it's not that I want staff to apply for those grants, but I think that since we're all on this board because we want to encourage biking and walking, it would be nice, maybe not even a whole meeting, but just include it on the agenda every year if there are smaller grants that you know of that are cyclical, because the board's going to change. And you could say, oh, this grant's always coming up, or I don't know who would know those things. And if no one does, and you think it would be better time spent for the board to Google it, then that's the answer that we need for putting it on our board work plan.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Jesse. I think that's really helpful, and it's something that I would certainly spend a little bit of time researching. But when we decide what month that's going to go on the board, or on the agenda, I would invite board members to all do their own research, because I'm sure they're going to find things that we might not be able to find.
I think that's fair. Yeah. What about special projects? That was included in the sample work plan that came from Olympia, Washington. They had a whole time devoted to special projects. And from a city perspective, I wasn't sure what that would mean to you, or what.
When I hear that, what I think of is like Highway 200. That's not the regular long-range transportation plan update. It's not the capital improvement or the community investment it's not the CIP. It's not the annual public works list. It's a special project that the board is being consulted on how the design of that project is going. One that the board has seen earlier was California Street. Spent a lot of time on helping with California Street. I see those as the types of special projects that come up each year as needing some board input and approval.
Gotcha. Okay. That helps. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, the final thing on my list that I had so far was just how safety concerns and actual, pedestrian vehicle, bike vehicle collisions are reported, how they are statistically followed in a data-driven way. One of the things I love about New York City's Department of Transportation is that their graphs are amazing. They can tell, that bike fatalities, the pedestrian fatalities are going up, and that means that they're tracking it, which can allow your city to really shine when you are doing the very best practices. It allows everyone to see we make our roads and bikeways and pedestrian areas safe. And you can see this in our data, and we're going to show it because we're proud of what we are doing. And I think it's important for us to understand how is that information collected? How is that information, like, where is it and how does it work? And so what do you think about that, guys?
I think it's a great idea and another presentation that we'd be happy to give. In the immediate term, I can point you to the MissoulaMPO.com website where there are web maps. There's one for bicycling and one for walking that show where the bike ped crashes have been from 2007 to 2017. We only get data in annual chunks. And that map was made in 2018, so we only had the 27 up to 2017. We have the 2018 data and we have the 2019 data, and we just haven't had, because the MPO is doing the long range plan update, they haven't had the capacity to update those maps with the more recent data. But we do have maps readily available that show where the bike and pedestrian collisions are. Our data limitation there is that we get them in annual batches from MDT. All of the data, all the police reports get sent to the Montana Department of Transportation, where they scrub any potentially identifying information from them and then get them back to us so that you can't backtrack and find out who was involved in what crashes.
Yeah, I feel like that would be worthwhile for us to kind of understand, especially as you track data over time. So it's one thing to see a map where there are incidents reported. It's another thing to see, like, how's Missoula done with that stuff in the last 5 years? And I think that it sounds like it's easy to find and could be something that we could talk about in a meeting. Yeah. And then in addition to that, I just wanted, maybe it's in the same, like, I don't know if it would be the same, but I heard Jessica say the Mountain Lion coming to present would be something that she is interested in hearing about, as far as considering what they're doing in the New Mullen area and other service ranges. Anyone else have like something really specific that was not included on the list? Because our time has flown. I want to be sure that people have a chance to look at the list and think, no, I really have something I want to hear about during the board meeting next year. All right, so that's basically 10 months worth of topics, in addition to the special projects, which seem like they always perpetually come up. And so I feel like I'm comfortable with a 10-month work plan as kind of a direction to go, unless someone has anything else that they want to add. Because I do want to have a little time to discuss the Higgins Bridge, which is our next agenda item. And I do think people have strong feelings about it. And so everyone okay moving on? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah. Oh, wait, Ben's got his hand up. Nope.
Can I just weigh in? Jesse, I really appreciate the work that you're doing to lead this meeting and lead this discussion about this, and think it's super helpful. And I think it'll give staff a good heads up. I just want to clarify. I want to ask you a couple questions about how you envision the next steps. My thought would be that you might compile the information, the data, and I've been taking notes on a form too, but I imagine it's not the same one, or maybe you're just handwriting now. But anyways, we'll put our heads together and compare those notes and create a draft kind of calendar for the board to look at next month's meeting, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then if we really know when you want to have staff presentations on sidewalks and things like that, it'll be much easier for me to, I could go to the engineering staff that manages that and say, hey, in July next year, the Bike Ped Board is going to want a presentation on sidewalks, and we're going to want to spend the whole meeting on it. Can you start gathering that info? And they'll be able to do something like that. So to me, that makes the most sense. But if you have a different thought about how you were envisioning that moving forward, we're all ears.
I think that sounds great. I think it's helpful for people on the board to have expectations, and it's helpful for staff to have expectations. And so laying this out every year like this. It may change because maybe special projects come up. Maybe there's a huge infrastructure stimulus package done and we get a whole bunch of money and we're going to have a lot to talk about. That would be great. But I think that that's exactly what I want. And so to clarify, this is an internal document for the board to work with. This is just for us. That's my understanding. I have a bunch of hands up. Hold on one second. Let me see. Britt, I think, had her hand up first.
I just wanted to, say thank you for doing all this work. And also, it occurs to me what Ben says about getting on a schedule so we know in advance. I think we have a lack of like public input and public comment showing up to our board. And so if we know, hey, we're going to talk about sidewalks in May, that might be good for the public so that they might know to show up to our meetings too. It would be just wonderful if we could get some public more often. So having this work plan should help with that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that 100%. Okay, Jean, I think your hand was next.
Yeah, just quick to one thing what Britt just said, and I was thinking, if we had, again, something in advance, maybe there'd be a way we could send out a little notice to neighborhood councils about some of these things coming up, and then people that connect with the neighborhood councils would then want to give input on some of these certain things as well, especially as it affects their neighborhoods. That's number one. And then my original comment quickly was going to be in terms of the safety concerns. It's been a long time since we've ever had any connection with the police department in terms of how they view pedestrian and bike safety and what their officers, what their perspectives are and what they're able and willing to do. So I think maybe it might not be a bad idea to try to, at some point, and I'd be happy to volunteer to do it, maybe with one or two other people, put together a draft recommendation letter in terms of how the police maybe can shift some way in a prioritization of recognizing some of the pedestrian and bike issues that they may not be recognizing or considering right now.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in school, one of my friends got a ticket for biking on the wrong way. And so we had just moved and he was just trying to take a shortcut and was going against traffic instead of riding on the right. And the cop pulled him over with the flashers and everything. And I don't know that happens here. I've never seen any enforcement of bicycling, but it is certainly a good point and well made. I think it's nice. It would be valuable to have the police input as far as that goes. Okay, so now without further ado, shall we talk about the Higgins Bridge safety concerns? What are folks seeing and what are folks thinking about? Britt's got her hand up. Go ahead.
So I was kind of hoping that Corey would put a motion as a agenda item that we could maybe vote on to make a statement about the speed limit being possibly too high, or maybe the fact that there's still no sharrows on the bridge. And I don't think that motion made it on there, so I guess I have a point of order about whether we can do that or not, whether we can officially take any position on the conditions there or not. So I don't think my motion made it on the agenda. Am I correct?
No, it wasn't on the agenda, but we could certainly include it in the next agenda and give public notice. I'm not sure that we have other options at this point. What do you think, Ben?
I don't think you can make a motion without an item on the agenda. And Corey mentioned it in the email, but said that he was uncomfortable including it because it's a state project and not a city project. But I don't know. I share your frustration, Britt, and I don't know what the best avenue for this board to take is. Maybe Aaron can weigh in with some thoughts. Aaron, you listening?
I'm going to give up my conversation here and hear what everyone else has to say. But I went out there again, and then the sharrows still aren't there, and so I just think it's unacceptable, and I feel like we as a board should say something about that. It's in the heart of our city, even though it's a state project. It's in the heart of our downtown. I feel like it's something we should talk about. So I want to hear what everyone else thinks about the no sharrows thing and the speed limit and the ice and whatnot, and I will just listen.
Aaron, did you have comments about what you think would be most helpful?
I'm not sure what would be most helpful, honestly. I think MDT is aware of the challenges out there. I think you're right. There's more that could probably be done. For sharrows, I think at this point, telling them that they need to put sharrows down is going to be not necessarily, like, we may have just missed the window until we get another nice day. They can't go out and put the sharrows down on the snow. And so, at worst, it sort of gives them an easy out, which I don't think is the case. I know that they were planning to, and Ben, you may know, or have had conversations with Katie and the project managers. But it's something we could follow up on and just get an update and put some pressure there to try to get those done. The speed limit, I know they were looking into, and I don't know where that's at. So that's something else that we could follow up on. Again, I don't know that the bike headboard, you all having a motion and voting on it has much weight unless it goes through council or but you could call your city council reps and probably get the same response from council, would be my guess.
Don't you think though that if we made a motion at our next meeting in December, that it does send a clear message to the council that we see it, we don't agree with it, we may not have any power over the situation, but if you're representing your community, don't you think that having, even if it's not necessarily a motion that's going to be an advisory guidance, it certainly is something like we're stating that people on this board are uncomfortable, and the council may say, we have no power, we're sorry you're uncomfortable, but if something untoward were to happen, then we would say, well, we did have a motion, we did communicate with our elected leaders who represent the interests of the people, and if the people are uncomfortable and they tell their elected officials, we don't like something that's happening in our town, then it's in their balls in their court, and they may be hamstrung and not be able to do anything about it because it's a state project. But I still think it deserves to be a motion on the agenda. I feel that way. If people disagree, I am okay with the fact that it's a motion that we may not be able to, affect change in some really specific structural concrete way, but it certainly is an opinion.
Jessica, I totally agree with what you just said in terms of number one. I think we should be able to, and this could go over to a number of other things, say, here's something we see which we're not happy with, and we think we would like to see this happening, and maybe the city doesn't have the power to have this happen, but we'd like them to try to think of some way to help them make it happen, and just to have our voices out there and have the community through us speak. And quickly, in terms of the sharrows, I think there's a modification, and I will try to look it up and see if I can find it in signage. There's the old share the road sign that you see, the yellow diagonal signs every once in a while, and it's a standard sign. And I think they've redone it where it says share the road, but instead of showing the car off to the left and the bicycle off to the right, meaning you're supposed to share that road, that lane, essentially side by side at the same time. That can't happen on the bridge right now. And I think there's a modification to that sign, I don't know if it's official or not, where it shows a car behind a bicycle, where the bicycle's in front of the car in the lane, and the car is following that bike at a reasonable distance. And I think if we could put that kind of a signage up, if it's available, and I'll try to look into it, that would take care of the sharrows issue, I think, especially during these times when we get snow and ice. The sharrow's not going to show up. In terms of safety on the bridge, I think making sure that Public Works gets plenty of road grit down on the bridge, especially in the downhill part, is really, really important right now for keeping cyclists safe, for cars to make sure they have really good braking potential on the bridge during the winter, during the construction.
I also
Good idea,
think,
Gene. I'll look into that signage. The changes that I did notice they make is they really cleaned up the southbound approach from downtown to the hip strip and lined up where you'd make the transition as a bicyclist better. And then they've added bikes may use full lane signage
Mhm.
in a really prominent location to encourage bike riders to take the full lane and to let drivers know that that is likely to happen. But it's still a problem. One of our coworkers was actually run into the barricade last week by an angry motorist who passed her on the bridge.
well, I mean, the other thing that I wonder if the city council might be interested in doing is just saying the Higgins Bridge may not be safe for bikes and pedestrians during this 2 years of construction. And perhaps you should consider your route. And it's not, I mean, I know that that's not great, but if it's the truth, if we think that within MDT's, structure, nothing is going to change, then maybe we tell people you should change just during this time. And then it's going to be amazing. But during this time, we're worried.
It's not going to be the full 2 years of construction. It'll only be until June when the west side is open and there's a really nice wide bike lane and sidewalk outside of the car travel, but point taken.
All right, James has his hand up.
Sorry about that. Ben, do you know if MDT has a camera monitoring the bridge in the instance that there was a traffic situation, or like the employee who was struck by a vehicle, to protect that person against a motorist who might speed away, cause harm, cause an incident, and then speed away?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I know on these projects they often have they're often taking sort of real-time photography, real-time photos. They did that with Russell Street, where they had to regular updates, and you could go to the website and see what was going on with the project. So that's a good thought. Could reach out.
And certainly, if they were unwilling to do it, perhaps the city council would be interested in doing it.
I think there's state law that limits use of cameras for traffic enforcement in the state of Montana. In fact, I'm almost positive that it's prohibited. So if there was a camera up for some other purpose and you happen to be able to use it for a crash, I think that's one thing. But putting up cameras specifically for traffic enforcement, I'm pretty sure is outlawed in Montana. I know that doing like the camera-based speed enforcement, things like that, are not allowed, and so there's limits on what you can actually do in Montana. So I'm guessing that would be a limit for MDT as well.
Yeah, red lights as well. At what point is this is a total tangent, but at what point is that going to be like? There's so much research that shows that those are safety improvements that our state law is actually endangering people.
You should tell your colleague about that. I'm just kidding. I don't know if you should do that, but I don't know, guys. I feel like it deserves to be on the agenda as a motion that we're going to express our concern about the situation and safety for bikes and pedestrians using the Higgins Bridge until June, when the west side is completed and then people have a safe sidewalk and bike lane. I think that should be on the December agenda, and we should just do that right in the beginning and get it done. Okay. Anyone else have any final thoughts? Our time is, I did have an announcement. That's the next thing. Let me check, see if anybody's got their hands up. Oh yeah, Jessica has her hand up. Hold on. Go ahead, Jessica.
Can you hear me? I might have been. Oh, okay. So on the LRTP, it sounds like we'll hear about that in June, but just so you know, there is a November public engagement campaign. So you can keep an eye out on the Missoula Transportation Planning Facebook and also Missoula MPO. And if anyone has any ideas about public outreach or anyone who should be kept aware, let me know and I can pass that on. And I don't know if Erin has anything else to add, but there will be things going on in the next month.
Yeah, it may be towards the end of November. We're trying to make sure we have everything in to a point where it's worth bringing out to the public, and so trying to get that done as quickly as possible so that we can go out in November and December. So we'll likely go through the end of the year with that outreach, just knowing that holidays are a tough time and there's no reason to close anything down before Christmas, so, or the end of the year at least.
All right, Britt has her hand up.
Yeah, this is real quick to close the conversation about the bridge. I think we should have it as a discussion item on that agenda next month to just discuss the construction detour thing in general, so that, you know, we figure out what it is about city laws or state laws or whatever that governs when people make a construction detour, that they wouldn't have to think about bicyclists and pedestrians and the bus stops as well when they make that detour. And, you know, just like the broader topic, because that is something valuable about our motion if we can wrap it all in. But I think we need to discuss it first, which is why I didn't draft anything. I did draft something and sent it to Corey, but that didn't make it on the agenda, but that's okay. We'll put it on next month, and thank you for being willing to talk about it.
Britt, I think that's a great idea to tie it to, especially if you're going to send it to city folks. We have some provisions, and I'll try and prepare those for next month, about how you manage bike ped traffic through detours. We have rules about that for construction. They don't apply to state agencies, but we do our best to enforce them with like private construction and on our own projects. We still don't get it right. We put bike lane closed signs in the middle of the bike lane. You know, it's frustrating, but I'll work on that with you, Britt, for sure. Erin, I guess you missed maybe when we were talking about LRTP, but I guessed that the next kind of presentation might likely be January, or sometime in the winter pre-adoption, there would be a presentation back to the board. But were you thinking that as well?
Yeah, or we could do a presentation to the board with our sort of public outreach that's happening in November, December. I mean, I think the timing will line up reasonably well at the beginning of December, that we'll be fully into that campaign. So something to keep in mind for the December board meeting, if you're interested in seeing sort of where we're at. Jessica has a pretty good, has been getting updates and attending our advisory committee meetings. But if it's something you'd like, we can certainly do a presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Well, the next thing is announcements, and then the next meeting. I just really quickly, we were asked last time to give specific examples of the website, the updates for the bike ped board. And what I would say is when you click onto it, to the additional board resources, that's where things really, really get dated. And so updating our most recent advisory opinions to the city, it's like most of the opinions and the examples on there are from 2011. And so I just wanted to see, there are other places to find the board agendas and the links to the meetings. There's a link to audio transcripts, which I'm not sure we still need. But just having those opinions or things that we've actually created and have come out of the board, I think would be nice to see. Our next meeting is the 1st of December at 3 o'clock. It's set on the agenda at City Council Chambers, but I assume that really it's at Zoom.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so I think that anyone have any other announcements that they want to make? All right. I thought it was a good meeting. Thank you guys all for being here. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 5:04. I look
Thank
forward
you,
to seeing
Jesse.
you guys.
Nice work.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks. Good to see you guys. Take care.